Welcome to the deep dive. We've got some really interesting source material this time. Articles, forum bits, even some late-night documentary clips, all digging into this puzzle of the Metepec Creature.
Yeah, it's a fascinating one. Came out of Metepec, Mexico back in, 2007?
That's right, 2007. And our mission here, as always, is to take all this material you've gathered, kind of sift through it, and really get to the heart of this pretty strange story.
Exactly. We're aiming to go beyond just the headlines. We want to look at, the discovery itself, the scientific attempts to figure it out.
And inevitably, the way these unexplained things seem to spawn all sorts of alternative ideas, right? Wild theories sometimes.
Absolutely. So think of this as like your fast track to understanding the core pieces of this really bizarre case.
Okay, let's set the scene. Metepec, Mexico, 2007. A farmer finds something. Not your usual discovery, I take it.
No, definitely not. What he stumbled upon was this tiny mummified figure, just a few inches long.
Wow, tiny.
Yeah, but it wasn't just the size. It had this, vaguely humanoid form. Head, torso, arms, legs.
Humanoid. Right.
Sort of, but the proportions were off. Very striking. Picture this really small body, but with a head that was, super elongated.
Elongated.
How so?
Almost insect-like, some descriptions said. And these huge, dark eyes. Plus, the sources mentioned this weird skin texture, almost leathery. Didn't immediately look like any known animal.
Okay, yeah. An elongated head, big eyes, leathery skin on something that small. I can see how that would make you stop and really look.
Definitely raises questions.
So the obvious first question everyone must have asked was, what is this thing? What were the initial theories floating around?
Well, almost right away, because it looks so strange, you got these pretty extraordinary claims popping up.
Like what? Aliens?
That was a big one, yeah. The idea that it could be some kind of extraterrestrial being. Maybe it survived a crash or was part of some ET biology experiment left behind.
Wow, okay. Straight to aliens. That's quite a leap.
Often is with things this unusual. Were there any other, maybe slightly more down-to-earth ideas being kicked around at first turn?
Alongside the alien stuff, there was also serious talk that maybe, just maybe, it was a completely unknown species.
Like a new kind of animal.
Exactly. A biological anomaly that science just hadn't cataloged yet.
Yeah.
I mean, we're still finding new things in jungles and oceans, right?
True. So the idea of an undocumented creature wasn't totally out there.
No, not entirely dismissed, especially early on.
Okay, so you've got these big possibilities hanging there, alien, unknown species. Did the scientific community step in? Try to get some actual answers?
They did, yeah. Pretty quickly, too, because the media attention and public curiosity were, immediate and intense.
Right.
So proper scientific investigations got underway, various analyses trying to pin down its biology, its origins. DNA testing was obviously a major part of that.
Ah, DNA. Okay, this feels like where we might finally get some solid ground. What did those first tests show?
Well, this is where the story gets a bit
murky. How so?
The initial reports, according to the sources, suggested the DNA results were inconclusive.
Inconclusive? What does that actually mean in this context? Sample ruined. Too small.
Could be any of those, technically.
Yeah.
Degraded sample, not enough material to work with. But, for people already leaning towards mystery, inconclusive just kind of fed the fire.
Yeah, I can see that. It doesn't give you an answer, just more questions.
Exactly. And then later on, things got even more complicated. There were claims, separate claims, about finding partially human DNA.
Partially human DNA? Okay, wait. That's significant. How did people interpret that?
Oh, that poured gasoline on the fire. Especially for theories about, secret genetic experiments or maybe some kind of weird hybrid creature.
A human connection, even partial, points away from just a weird animal, doesn't it?
It certainly seemed to, for some. The idea of a human element, even if the details were fuzzy or debated, pushed the narrative towards something manipulated.
Yeah.
Something not entirely natural.
But how solid were those later claims? Were they verified?
That's the crucial point. The reliability, the specifics, even the existence of these later partially human DNA results. They've often been questioned by mainstream scientific experts. It's not like there was a peer-reviewed study confirming it,
Ah, okay. So intriguing, but maybe not the smoking gun some people thought it was.
Probably not, no. More like adding another layer of maybe facts to an already confusing picture.
Okay, so the DNA is complicated. What about the physical body itself? Did forensic analysis, looking at the anatomy, tell us anything clearer?
Well, the forensic exams did reveal things, but maybe not what you'd expect. They found a lot of features that just didn't really line up, biologically speaking.
In line up how?
The anatomy. The skeletal structure, if you can call it that, the tissue composition. It didn't neatly match any known animal group. Not mammals, not reptiles, not amphibians.
So it didn't fit anywhere.
Pretty much. This lack of clear biological parallels, this sort of anatomical weirdness, actually became a key argument later for the idea that it wasn't a natural organism at all.
Because even really different animals share basic biological structures, right?
Exactly.
There.
Fundamental building blocks.
Yeah.
This thing seemed to kind of defy those fundamentals.
Okay, let me recap. We've got inconclusive early DNA, later unverified claims of partial human DNA, and a physical structure that seems biologically improbable.
Yep.
That sounds like the absolute perfect breeding ground for
Conspiracy theories. You got it. When official answers are confusing or missing or contradictory, especially with something so visually bizarre.
people start filling in the blanks themselves.
Precisely. That vacuum gets filled with alternative explanations and they can spread like wildfire.
So apart from the it's definitely an alien camp, what were the other major conspiracy theories that bubbled up around this little creature?
Well, probably the most common, and the one that still has legs, is that the whole thing was just a hoax.
A fake. Someone just made it.
That's the idea. That it was deliberately a fabrication meant to fool people.
Yeah.
For whatever reason.
Okay, that makes a certain kind of sense. If it looks unnatural and the science is confusing, maybe it was unnatural because someone literally built it.
It's a strong contender.
Were there other, maybe more elaborate theories? Darker ones?
Oh, for sure. Another big one was the government cover-up theory.
Ah, the classic.
Yeah. The idea here is that, someone in authority actually knew what it was. Maybe it was alien, or maybe it was from some secret project, but they actively suppressed the truth.
Why? To stop panic. Keep technology secret.
Exactly those kinds of reasons. Prevent public hysteria, hide evidence of ETs, or conceal some kind of potentially illegal or unethical experiment.
The old, they don't want us to know routine. And didn't you mention a third angle earlier? Something about genetics?
Right, that ties into both the cover-up and the hoax sometimes, but it also stands alone.
Ah.
The secret genetic experiment theory.
How does that one work?
This theory suggests the creature wasn't alien, but it wasn't exactly natural either. It was like a human-animal hybrid or some other kind of genetically manipulated organism created in a lab.
That somehow got out. Or was maybe deliberately leaked.
Something like that. An experiment gone public, essentially.
Okay, so we have the main contenders. Outright hoax, government cover-up of something major, aliens or experiments, or an escaped genetic creation. What sort of proof or evidence did people who believe these theories actually point to?
Well, the evidence is often more about interpretation than concrete facts,
How do you mean?
Like, the creature's really unusual appearance itself is often presented as proof it couldn't possibly be from Earth. Couldn't be natural.
So it looks weird, therefore it's alien artificial.
Kind of, yeah. And those conflicting DNA reports we talked about. Perfect fodder. Believers saw that as clear evidence of a cover-up or proof that scientists were manipulating the data.
Because if the story keeps changing, someone must be lying, right?
That's the logic used, yeah.
Yeah.
Any inconsistency becomes suspicious. Also, a big factor was a perceived lack of transparency.
People felt like they weren't getting the full story from officials or scientists.
Exactly. If the official report seemed incomplete, or if questions weren't answered satisfactorily, that just bred suspicion. It allows those alternative narratives to seem more plausible because, well, the official story feels weak or hidden.
And did expert skepticism play a role, like when scientists said this is probably not an alien?
Ironically, yes. Sometimes when experts dismissed the more out-there theories, conspiracy theorists would just twist that.
Oh.
They'd claim the experts were part of the cover-up, or were deliberately downplaying it because they were scared or paid off or whatever. It becomes a kind of self-sealing argument.
Right. Any evidence against the theory is just more evidence of the cover-up. It's tricky.
Very. It's a hallmark of many conspiracy theories.
Okay, let's shift gears then. Let's talk about what most sources, and probably most scientists now, lean towards. The idea that the Metepec Creature was, in fact, a hoax. What's the actual evidence supporting that conclusion?
There are several pretty strong indicators, actually. First, when people really examine the creature's physical makeup closely.
Not just the weird shape, but what it was made of.
Right. The structure, the composition, it started to look less like naturally formed biological tissue and more like something artificial. constructed.
Like glued together?
Or molded.
Indications of that, yes. Suggestions that it might have been assembled from various materials, maybe including some animal parts, but not in a way that represented a single, coherent, naturally grown organism.
Ah, okay. So under the microscope, maybe literally it looked more like a model than a creature.
That seems to be the implication from several analyses, yeah. And tied to that, as we mentioned before, is the sheer biological implausibility.
It just didn't fit anywhere in the known tree of life.
Correct. It wasn't just a new branch. It seemed to defy the basic rules of how life on Earth is structured and develops. The combination of features was just wrong, biologically speaking.
An evolutionary impossibility, maybe.
That's a good way to put it. And then, of course, there's the question you always have to ask with the potential hoax.
Motive. Why would someone do this? Why go to the trouble of creating such a thing? Well, there are the usual suspects. Attention is a big one. Fame.
Creating a worldwide sensation would definitely get you attention.
Absolutely. Think of the media frenzy. And sadly, money often plays a role too.
How so? Selling the creature.
Potentially.
Right.
Or selling stories, photos, giving paid interviews, maybe even creating related merchandise down the line. Exploiting that public fascination with the weird and unexplained can be, well, profitable for some.
So, putting it all together, it looked constructed, it didn't make biological sense, and there were clear potential motives for faking it.
It does paint a fairly compelling picture for the hoax explanation, doesn't it?
It really does. Seems less like a mystery from outer space and more like a case of, well, earthly deception.
That seems to be the most logical conclusion based on the available evidence, yes. It's a fascinating case study in how a bizarre object can just capture the public imagination and spin off into all these different narratives.
But here's maybe the really interesting part, isn't it? Even if the evidence strongly points to a hoax, the story persists. People are still fascinated by the Metepec creature. Why do you think it has such staying power?
That's a great question. I think it taps into something really fundamental in us. Humans seem almost wired to be drawn to mystery, to the unexplained.
We want to believe in something extraordinary.
Many of us do, yeah. There's this deep-seated desire for something beyond the ordinary, the mundane. In this case, I mean, look at it. It had the weird visuals, the initial confusion, the conflicting reports. It was perfect soil for that desire to grow.
It sort of represents that clash between wanting wonder and needing proof.
Exactly. That tension between our fascination with the unknown and the requirements of rational, evidence-based thinking. This story sits right in the middle of that tension.
So when we boil it all down, what's the big takeaway from this deep dive into the Metepec creature saga?
I think ultimately it's a really potent reminder of two things: the incredible allure of the unknown, and just as importantly, the absolute necessity of critical thinking.
Don't just accept the amazing story, look at the evidence.
Right. Ask questions, examine the sources, consider the motives. But it also makes you wonder, doesn't it? Why do these kinds of mysteries grab us so strongly?
That's the provocative thought, isn't it? What is it about the possibility of something truly bizarre, truly other, that holds such a powerful grip on our collective imagination?
Does it speak to our curiosity? A need for wonder? Maybe a dissatisfaction with just the known world? It's something to ponder.
It definitely is. It encourages us all to approach these kinds of claims with, a healthy skepticism, but maybe also an appreciation for why we find them so compelling in the first place.
Well said. Always dig for the evidence, but understand the appeal of the story too.
Well, thanks for joining us on this journey into the very strange story of the Metepec creature. It's been quite the trip, from initial shock to scientific probes and the strong likelihood of a clever hoax.
A really captivating example of how easily sensationalism can take hold, and why it's always worth digging a bit deeper for the more grounded answers.
We hope this deep dive has given you, our listener, a much clearer picture of this weird little chapter. And hey, we're always curious what other mysteries or big topics out there have grabbed your attention. Let us know.
Yeah, we'd love to hear.
Until the next deep dive, keep questioning, keep exploring,